Thank you. I am here today. My name is Mehta. I'm here today representing my son Aiden and the grassroots organization Protect Texas Fragile Kids, with representing approximately 2,100 medically fragile children and families throughout the state of Texas. 2 weeks ago, we shared some of the issues that many of our families have experienced since SB 7 went into effect under the Star Kids Managed Care System. And today you heard directly from some of those families, just a very small fraction of those families, about how this transition has impacted their child's life and their ability to care for their child, and has disrupted their care and keeping their child at home, keeping their child stable by this move to an inappropriate model. In light of everything we've heard today, and I'm going to be very quick and do bullet points as you've asked, I just want to back up a minute and review the stated objectives of the Texas Managed Care Program so that they're fresh in everyone's mind. Number one, provide Medicaid benefits that are customized to meet the healthcare needs of recipients under the program through a defined system of care. Number two, better coordinate care of recipients under the program. Number three, improve health outcomes of recipients. Number four, improve recipients' access to healthcare services. Number five, achieve cost containment and cost efficiencies. Number six, reduce the administrative complexity of delivering Medicaid benefits. Mm-hmm. And, need I say more? I mean, given what we've heard in this room today, can we say that any of those things are being achieved? Perhaps the cost containment piece,
I think there's
right?
A couple that are, but certainly some that aren't.
Given all of that, I think, not only what you've heard from families, but the many other stories that exist out there, what is the solution to that, right? Managed care is intended to incentivize people to wellness. Can you incentivize a child with chronic life-threatening conditions into wellness?
That's well said. That's interesting.
But I guess the real question is, how do you keep those children with chronic life-threatening conditions stable, right? How do you keep them at baseline? How do you keep them out of the hospital, out of an institution? And if we want to incentivize fragile kids into maintaining that stable baseline, then you incentivize their families by providing what they need to keep them stable and to keep them at baseline. And the best way to do that is not to further restrict access to care and services. It is not to further limit providers and the provider network. It is not to add more red tape and bureaucracy and more restrictions and more gatekeepers. That only serves to increase acute events, and it places children who live a very delicate balance on the edge of going over, and in many cases, over that edge. And it may provide short-term cost containment, absolutely, but it does come with some very harmful long-term consequences, some of which are life and death.
Yeah.
And so if we want to incentivize those children to remain stable, how do we do that? We give parents access to the doctors that they need, who have the expertise in the conditions that children have to keep them stable. We give them access to the equipment and the medications and the things that they need to keep them at home. And I could, you've heard many illustrations here today. I could give you many more. I'm not going to, but that's not what's happening under the current program. And as you all know, we were promised repeatedly that nothing would change when the system was implemented. And I think we can say without question that has not been the case. There's been a lot of harmful changes, and those continue unchecked. And so, you've heard in testimony from many families here today, none of us ever expected to be in this position. None of us ever expected to depend on the government to help keep our children alive. That's not something anyone ever expects when they have a child and bring a child into this world. But we also do our best to ensure that we're doing everything we possibly can to reduce that burden. And we try to maintain private insurance coverage. We try to do everything we can to keep our children home and alive and safe. What's happened under this current system is that those pieces have all fallen apart. The very fragile balance that most families achieve has been lost and is continuing to further deteriorate and fall apart. And so how do we fix that, right, is the question that you've asked repeatedly, Representative Frank. And I provided you with a list of what was 10 now, 11 things that we believe would be a stopgap measure or Band-Aid to the current system, not a long-term fix, but certainly something that would provide some immediate improvements to where we currently stand today with the system and what's happening to the medically fragile population. These are all things that we have been told, in theory, could be done under HHSC's rulemaking authority. and within the permissive language of SB 7. However, we have also been told by HHSC that they will not be done without legislative authority.
Okay.
So
that's very helpful to understand.
I would appreciate you taking the time to go through these simple bullet points,
Yep.
which I think address a lot of the issues that you've heard here today,
Yep.
and we believe are at least the beginning of a short-term plan going towards a more long-term plan for what would be appropriate for this population.
Okay.
And
Thank
last but not least, I do want to note, because we've heard this a lot, as a sort of a side note, I think it's important to clarify, since it's been raised recently, and not just here but in other meetings, that there's a lot of talk about managed care and MCOs being the reason for such a small STAR Plus HCBS waiver interest list. And I think it's imperative to make the distinction that that is not the reason. The reason that there's a small interest list for the STAR Plus population is because the state has put in place a policy that says that people who have SSI or full Medicaid are qualified for the STAR Plus HCBS waiver with no wait list. And therefore, the percentage of those who do is only those who have an income between 101% and 300% of federal poverty level, and those are the ones who go on the wait list. The state made a clear decision, and HHSC made a clear decision, to not apply that same policy to children in Medicaid and in MDCP. If they had, the MDCP interest list would have been cut in half. That was not due to managed care. That was a decision that the state made. So just wanted to make that clarification and really just ask you to take action to fix this mess and protect our children. Sure. You are our state's valuable resource. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Thanks.